me, yes, with me you can see Lara Redolfi de Zan, that is representing DREAM for this meeting. We are going to have few minutes now just to allow everybody to enter. Let me introduce myself. I'm Antonio Brunori. I am a forest engineer, and I am the Secretary General of the Program for Endorsement of Forest Certification in Italy, so it's PEFC. Today, our colleagues and relators are three important persons. I see that Pierre Gonin is already connected, is CNPF, and he's going to talk about the potential biodiversity index. Then we have Andrea Romero Montoya, FAO, and I see here he's connected. And the last person that is going to talk in 10 minutes is José Antonio Atauri Mezquida of Europark España. Probably you already have the opportunity to listen what was the introduction of this seminar, and I'm going to share with you a few words on what is the, here we are, the topic that we are going to talk about. We are here for indicators and tools for forest management, and together with the three speakers and the connected survey that we will do in the second part of this parallel session, we wish to evaluate the possibility of developing easy-to-adopt biodiversity diagnosis system, the need or not to apply standardized method for reading the factors related to biodiversity, and how to capitalize on lessons learned and best practices. Therefore, we are here now to start, and I ask to Pierre Gonin if he is available to start for his speech.
Yes, I'm ready.
Perfect. So the floor is yours.
Thank you.
You can share your presentation.
Yes.
Excellent. We see.
Is it ready? It's okay.
Is it ready? If you can put in presentation mode.
It's okay.
Still not.
Is it okay?
Unfortunately, still not. Probably you have to share the screen. In case it's not showing, you can.
It's not.
No, but no problem. If you can take out the note below and reduce the column on the left. So like that we can.
I try.
Yeah. We keep these minutes for you anyway, don't worry. These are normal technical problems, don't worry. Okay, try to put presentation mode. Yes, down. Okay, and now if you can, you see.
An hour, is it okay?
Okay, keep
Yes.
going. Yeah.
So I'm going to present you the index of biodiversity potential. This index was created to help a forest manager to take into account biodiversity in their management. Biodiversity is complex, and because you must describe all objects, species, habitat, and genetic at two levels, stand and landscape, and not only remarkable biodiversity, but also common diversity. IBP does not describe all diversity, only the species diversity at the stand level, and not remarkable diversity, but common diversity.
Pierre,
So,
Pierre,
yes.
we are still watching the first slide. Probably if you can click on the second.
I am on the second, but there is perhaps perhaps I will present with a PDF.
Okay.
Perhaps it will be better.
Probably, yes.
Maybe you have two screens and you can reduce to one screen. So when you go with the presentation, is the presentation in the mode.
Okay.
Okay.
Try
yes,
to see the
right.
second slide.
So with PDF, it will be better. Do you see the second slide?
We still see the first slide. Can you go on the second?
I am on the second.
Oh. Yeah, probably. You have two screens, right?
Yes.
I think. This is the problem.
Yes. Perhaps I will switch off one screen.
Yes, it's better.
Yes.
Just connect one.
Is it better? Sir?
Okay, now we see the second slide.
Yes, okay.
Please.
I say that IBP is a practical tool to evaluate the diversity of species at the stand level, and not only remarkable diversity, but also common diversity. Do you see the slide?
We still see the IBP slide, yes.
Okay, it's okay. So IBP is a practical tool to evaluate the capacity of forest stand to support common taxonomic diversity. IBP is an indirect and composite indicator which pulls 10 factors chosen from the key feature of diversity. 7 factors are directly related to management: native tree species, vertical structure, deadwood, very large living trees, microhabitats bearing trees, and openness. 3 other factors are rather concerning the context: continuity of woody state, and aquatic and rocky habitats. The survey methods are standardized and adapted to different contexts. The scoring system is very simple. For each factor, you give a score between 0 and 5 according to a scale of threshold values. Let's use factor B as an example. 5 canopy layers are defined For ligninous, layers occupied by foliage high, intermediate, low, and very low. And the last layers is composed by herbaceous and semi-ligneous. Then you give a note according to the number of canopy you have recorded. If you have only observed 1 or 2 layers, the score is 0. And if you have observed 5 layers, the score is 5.
Sorry, Mr. Gunin.
Yes.
We still see the second slide. I don't know if you... Oh, okay. If you want, I can share for you.
Yes, perhaps.
Okay, okay, it's better.
So I will.
Okay. One moment, please.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Let me see. Now you see in presentation mode?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, okay.
Very efficient.
Let's go to the
I apologize for this problem.
No problem. Let's go to the third slide.
Yes, you can go on. So I explained the factors, the 10 factors, and the system scoring with the factor B. And then the next one.
Okay.
There are several practical tools to help IBP users. Flyer about notation method, field sheet, spreadsheet, and websites. Next slide. Next slide. Yes. I am going to give you an example of using IBP in a Quercus Ilex stand with 2 stands, an adult and a mature stand. After recording IBP values on the shell, you can report the result in a synthetic graphic. On the axis, horizontal axis, you report the sum of the 7 factors connected to management. And on the vertical axis, you report the sum of the values of the 3 factors connected to context. So each stand is represented between low and high biodiversity potential, and you can compare each stand. On the radar diagram, you can report the value of the 10 factors. So you can identify the factors which are okay and in green here, and the factor you must improve. With these results, manager can define recommendation integrating diversity diagnostic. Next slide. In a forest with several stands, you can also record IBP, but separately in each stand. On this part, you report the result using the same color chart than the previous graph. So you can identify the stands with high diversity potential and the stands with low diversity potential. Next slide. IBP is also an educational tool that can be used in demonstration networks, in practical documents, and in technical and training on biodiversity. Next slide. IBP is also can also provide an overview analysis of biodiversity at the territorial level. On this map, IBP values are reported in the Regional Natural Park of Ariège-Pyrénées. These issues will help to identify potential area of tranquility. After, IBP has been also used in two programs developed to integrate the role of management in adapting for climate change. Bas Carbone Label in France and Climate Credit Climate in Catalonia. Next. IBP is also used by scientists as a rapid habitat assessment in studies which assess the impact of key characteristics STEM on biodiversity. Next. IBP was created in 2008 in France, and then a research and program development helped to improve IBP. Between 2008 and 2018, other countries used and tested IBP. In 2020, Catalonia adopted a first version of IBP. Since 2013, Switzerland tested and used IBP in training for engineers. Belgium, Morocco, and Lebanon have also used IBP. In 2018, two live projects are starting in Italy, Group of 4, and in Catalonia, Biologists. These projects have made it possible to harmonize and extend IBP, to develop practical documents, and to disseminate IBP. This section is carried out according with standardized methodology according to specification and guidelines document. Next. To co-construct IBP, an organization was created with an international committee of experts to give advice on the evolution of IBP. Next. And now, harmonized IBP version is available in Catalonia, France, Italy, and Switzerland. In this country, there are two IBP versions according to the geographical regions. A version in Atlantic continental Alpine region and another one in Mediterranean regions. Next. There are other countries who go on tested and extend IBP. Next. In conclusion, IBP is a simple and fast tool which help to evaluate the quality of stands for common taxonomic biodiversity. However, this index has some limits. It does not describe all the diversity, and it's not an accurate measure of biodiversity. Next. Thank you for your attention. And I apologize for the problem of presentation.
No problem, Pierre. Thank you very much. And we are going to give you opportunity to do a question. Unfortunately, only one because for time restriction. So if you can, if somebody would like to raise his hands, you see in the bottom line there is reaction. You can click and then raise your hand so we can see who would like to speak. Okay, I don't see any reaction. So, okay, you can eventually later do again the question. I give the floor to Andrea Romero Montoya of FAO, and her speech will be about UN hub on best practice for ecosystem restoration. Andrea, the floor is yours.
Thanks so much, Antonio. Could you see my slides?
Yes, we see the slide, not in presentation mode. Now, yes. Excellent.
Thanks so much. So, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I'm very delighted to be here on behalf of the FAO-led Task Force on Best Practices. That is a group established in the context of the United Nations Decade on Ecosystem Restoration. And I have been invited today to talk about the Hub on Good Practices for Ecosystem Restoration that this task force is developing right now. And as Antonio mentioned, I am Andrea Romero. I'm a junior consultant at the Forest and Landscape Restoration Mechanism at FAO, and I am the facilitator of this task force. So just to give you a quick overview of the task force to provide a bit of context, this task force is a coalition of almost 200 members from 87 organizations, global leading organizations, that is focused on enhancing knowledge dissemination and capacity development to support the implementation of the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration. So the roadmap of the task force has been developed around 7 outputs, but for today we will be focused on output 7, that is about the collection and dissemination on good practices. For more information about the other outputs or other achievements of the task force, you can visit the dedicated website. I will share the link later. So let's start by understanding why it is important to document and share good practices for ecosystem restoration. So first of all, because this exchange of good practices will foster mutual learning and knowledge sharing among restoration practitioners that will enable them to replicate and adapt these good practices to other situations with similar goals and to avoid repeating mistakes. And this will end up by enhancing their capacities to implement and sustain successful restoration efforts across different sectors, ecosystems, and regions. But here, the role of the platforms, hubs, and networks is critical to really facilitate and enable this exchange of knowledge and good practices among the practitioners. So platforms, hubs, networks needs to be developed to support this objective of this effort. Now, what is a good practice? So the documentation or the identification of a good practice could start from a simple innovation or experience that could become a promising practice, and then a promising practice could become a good practice, and a good practice could become a policy, principle, or a norm. But just let's focus on the difference between a promising and a good practice. So if a practice has been successfully proven in a specific context, then it is a promising practice because the potential for replicability is not that high. But when a practice has been successfully proven in several contexts, then it becomes a good practice because then the potential for replicability is very high or is already confirmed. So just to keep this, to bear this in mind. And then what is a good practice for ecosystem restoration? And to define this, we need to refer to the 10 principles that underpin ecosystem restoration that were preparing also by the Task Force on Best Practices in collaboration with other leading global organizations. These principles were launched last year in September and define what is good ecosystem restoration, but more applied to projects, programs, and initiatives. So, well, the publication is also available. I will share the link later for your information. But these principles are important because now the task force is working on transforming these principles into criteria to assess what a good practice for ecosystem restoration is. So this criteria is under final revision, but so far we have that a good practice should contribute to the achievement of at least one the Sustainable Development Goals, but probably more, should be participatory and inclusive, should belong to a restorative activity, because for the decade, ecosystem restoration is a continuum of restorative activities. A good practice should maximize net gain for nature and people, should address the causes of ecosystem degradation, or some or one, at least one of the causes of ecosystem degradation, and should integrate different types of knowledge, so traditional and scientific and other types of knowledge, should have clear and measurable objectives, should be able to be implemented at different scales, and should have been properly validated. So to confirm that the objectives were met, and should be replicable and adaptable. And here it's also important to differentiate that from a project, several practices could be derived or extracted. Then with this in mind, let's focus now on the framework for disseminating good practices throughout the UN decade. So for this, it's important to highlight that this effort of collection and dissemination of good practices will encompass promising and good practices that are applicable, or that could be from several or all the ecosystems, because the decade focused its efforts on all types of ecosystems, natural, semi-natural, productive, cultural, urban ecosystems, across all regions as well, and all types of restorative activities, and therefore sectors. So to this end, the task force has already developed a template for collection of good practices with these very inclusive categories. And this template was launched last year, was tested in the Mediterranean region, and now we are finalizing this template, updating the template based on the 10 principles for ecosystem restoration. This template will be linked to a platform called FERM, that is the Framework for Ecosystem Restoration Monitoring. And this FERM platform is being developed by the monitoring task force, also a task force led by FAO in the context of the decade. This platform will have several functionalities, but one of them, we are closely collaborating with them, with this platform, to host the good practices that will be collected and endorsed by the task force here. And we aim to have the framework operational by mid-year in the current year. To give you an overview of the template for systematic collection of good practices. So this template will encompass 8 sections, including the proponent information, the classification of the practice, the context and causes of degradation addressed, the objectives and methodology, the stakeholders actively and meaningfully involved, the enabling factors, constraints, and lessons learned, the impacts and validation, and additional information as pictures and all complementing information. This is also on the final revision by the task force. And here to give you also like an overview how the platform will look like. So this platform, as I mentioned, will have several functionalities, but there is already like a tab specific for good practices. We are now, this is a work in progress. We are developing the entry points for searching good practices based on the needs of the user. As you see, we already have the classification with all the categories of ecosystems that are included in the vision of the UN decade. But we will have also the possibility to filter by region, by topics, but by restoration interventions, and others that can really facilitate the search by the users. So I think I was a bit fast, I don't know, but this is the end of my presentation, and thank you very much for this invitation and this opportunity.
Thank you, Andrea. Very nice, very timely, perfectly in time. I have immediately a question for you, then I open the floor for the colleagues. I understand that this is an operational situation, so it's going to be ended in June of the coming year. I see that there is no specific topic about forest, but it is about vegetation. That means that this framework is really for all type of ecosystem, and for forest you focus on vegetation only. It's just a question, very rapid.
Yes, indeed, it's focused on all types of ecosystems, but for forests and for all ecosystems, in the vision of the task force, a good practice could be a technology, could be a technique, could be an approach. So not only on vegetation, but could include socioeconomic aspects as well. So a practice could be directly related to socioeconomic aspects. So we'll be very inclusive in that way.
Excellent, thank you very much. I ask you if you can put in the chat the link where we can download the publication, because I tried to screenshot, but it was too rapid. Thank you very much. And I open the floor for the colleagues if you have one question, one or two, since she was very timely. I see that she's going to put in the chat. Thank you very much. And I'm pretty sure that the two presentations and the one that Jose Antonio is going to present are going to be available for the people who are attending at this parallel session. Okay, I don't see any questions, so I give the floor to Jose Antonio Tauri Mesquida. I hope I pronounce properly.
Perfectly, thank you.
Excellent. And he's a representative of Europark España. Please, it's your time. Explain your role, and in 10 minutes you have the opportunity to explain the topic. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can you see my screen?
Yes, indeed.
Okay, thank you for the organization for inviting us to talk a little about our network of reference stands that we are actually developing in Spain under a LIFE project, LIFE Red Bosques. I would like to start with a very short presentation of ourselves. We are a university foundation linked to the Spanish ecologist Fernando González Bernaldez, and in the foundation we run the technical office of Europark Spain. So we are in close contact with all park managers in all the Spanish country. We developed this network of reference forests under the LIFE Red Bosques project, which ended on 2020. It was a project focused on developing a network of knowledge and of experts around forest conservation. So we worked very closely with the scientists through the Catalan Center for Forest Research, and with public administration and park and forest managers, thanks to our alliance with Europark Spain. So all the work that you are going to see is has been made in a very participatory way. Project objectives were to provide benchmarks for evaluating the conservation status of forests in the Mediterranean, and to incorporate criteria for biodiversity conservation mainly, and also transfer all this knowledge to stakeholders. So I'm going to explain the first of these objectives, which final product was this network of old growth forests. To put you in some context, this is a map of the forests in Spain, which is about 50% of the territory and the land, and Natura 2000, 27% of national territory. So it's a very substantial part of our territory is forest and protected under Natura 2000. But if you look at the reports of the Commission, the conservation status of forests are only 5% in a good condition, and most of them are in this inadequate or inadequate condition. Causes of this situation are complex, but one of them we think is that because if you look at the forest life cycle from the first stages of young stages to the mature and old growth phases. Due to the ancient use of the forests, these stages of matureness and old growth are almost lacking in all the Mediterranean. So finding them and protecting them, it's for us a priority if we want to foster the conservation status of forests. This is what we are looking for. So this kind of stance with no human footprint, where timber extraction has stopped, knowing that we are not going to find any virgin forest. So they are forests that has been used somewhere, sometime, but that are now recovering. And we are looking for something like this in a more classical model of old growthness, forests with a canopy with many species, with many layers, with a very high density of very old trees with microhabitats, with a very substantial quantity of dead wood, both standing or falling in the floor, and with a dynamic of disturbances of gaps, disturbances that initiates the regeneration in a very simplified way. Of course, there are variations according to the type of forest. To characterize this type of stance, we have developed a system of indicators that we group in three main issues: maturity, human footprint, and spatial integrity. Each of them has a set of indicators. As you can see, for example, maturity is evaluated by these indicators: tree species, basal area, vertical strata, etc., which are very common in silviculture. Human footprint is evaluated also with quantitative indicators, and there are a set of indicators calculated by GIS analysis, which are more referred to landscape. These indexes are aggregated in a global index, and when a particular stance goes over a given threshold, we consider this stand as a reference stand. This as a specific set of stands that have the highest scores in our index. All these indexes are taken in the field, in permanent in field plots, according to a very protocolized method. So reference stands are the best examples we can actually find on the landscape, on the territory, for each type of forests. For some of them, they are true old growth forests, for example, these beech forests in the Pyrenees. And for some kinds of forests, we don't find any mature stands. For example, endemic forests of junipers, we have not found still any mature stand because of ancient use of this kind of habitats. As I have said, this method is standardized and available on the website of both field sheets and manuals, and have been used in by all our members of Europark Spain in the last years. All the information is in a database in the web, where there is a geoportal where you can see the stands and access to the data, and most important, you can make comparisons among stands and compare a given stand with the national inventory of forests, which is a regular sampling of forests that can be considered like the average forest, not necessarily old growth. So what we have achieved until now, we have reported more than 200 stands. 56 of them are considered reference. We have here in green. They comprise 16 forest types and 3 biogeographical regions. They have been, this network is being constructed in a participatory way by each administration, with regional administration, and following those standardizing protocols. And as you can see, there is still very wide gaps. Their network is not completely representative. We need to incorporate some regions to the project, but we are step by step fulfilling it. Some kind of results that we have is that we can actually compare this stance with other stands in the country, and you can see here as an example how the maturity index is much higher in this reference stance than in the national inventory stance. You can download this kind of information from the website very easily. So this network of stands is useful. What is this? Is it useful for? What is being used by the members until now? First of all, for law enforcement, we have to comply with the commitment of the Commission to identify and protect primary and old growth forests under the biodiversity strategy. So this is our first step in this direction. It's obvious. It's also a tool to protect endangered species that are linked to this kind of habitats very closely. All kind of groups of insects, flora, birds, bats, and mosses and lichens, as you all know. They are being used as a reference for assessing conservation status of Natura 2000 sites in some administrations, using old growth stands as a reference and considering that a forest in a good condition should contain at least part of its area under this old growth situation. Old growth stands can be used as a reference or inspiration for a more sustainable forestry. And of course, we think that they will play a role in the climatic crisis as they can give us some inspiration on how to manage forests to make them more resilient to climate change. And of course, they have many other benefits to societies, such as physiological and psychological and even therapeutic. So that's basically all. Just a final idea is that all growth forests are very important, but 99% of landscape is like this, is young forests, very continuous, very homogeneous, monospecifics, and so very vulnerable to climate change. This is what we need, is to manage these forests to make them more resilient. And we hope that all growth stands we can give us some ideas and some inspirations to achieve this. And thank you very much. Those are the materials that we have developed that can be downloaded in English and Spanish. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Indeed, if you can also write in the chat the website, so it will be useful for people who were not able to rewrite. Very, very good, very nice examples. Since we are going to have now an interactive session with key questions, the people will notice that some questions are on reference stands. So it was very interesting what Jose was explaining us. We have time for one question, if you want. And meanwhile, I'm preparing the survey that we prepare for you. If I don't see any question, okay. So I share my screen and you will see that we are going to, okay. Lara, can you confirm that you see my screen?
Yes.
Excellent. So now we are going to have 20 minutes, if we are able to do faster, it's better, in which we are going to ask you some questions, because we are very much interested in having an interaction. We were able to receive inputs from the three speakers, but we have specific questions because we know regarding tools and good practices that is complex to identify and to write down which are the characteristics of biodiversity in a forest. And this is even more difficult in mature forest stands. Therefore, we would like to have some tools, some methodologies that can be put in place in order to facilitate the development of silvicultural practices that can increase or even integrate more biodiversity concept in our practices. So we have some questions for you. Lara is going to put now the survey available for you, and we ask you to assign a value for those two questions. So, do you think that it is better to let the forest select trees without any specific methodology to analyze forest stands, or you think it is better to apply standardized methodologies for the analysis of biodiversity factors? This is also through technological tools. So our questions are related to two different approaches. If one more standardized with technological tools, or forester that are trained on biodiversity factor that can do such selection without any specific methodology. So, Lara, if you can
yes.
launch the survey.
Yes, now we start with the first survey.
Let me see. Okay, you probably can see. So you can, according to your thinking, put a vote on 1 and 2 survey. For example, in survey number 1, you can put from 1 to 5, having 5 as most relevant. And in number 2, from 1 to 5. Logically, these two approaches are different. So it's, I would say, coherent if you put 5 in one, the other one will be at least 1 or 2. Or if you have no ideas, you can put an equal vote for both survey. So I see that you have to put the number and then to send the survey, and we will have also probably the result.
Okay.
Lara will show us.
Yes. Okay. And now share the results. Okay.
For the survey number 1, we see that the majority is, let's say, is equal for the approach, while for survey number 2, the majority is for a good affirmance, for appreciation of a standardized methodology. Okay. Now, in this case, we are going to have few more seconds, and we can pass to the second survey. The second survey is again connected to the topic tools and best practices. Let me know when you can go to the second question.
You can go, Antonio.
Ah.
To the second, yeah.
Okay, let me see why. Okay, yeah, it was start. Regarding tools, methodology, and good practices, again, well, we know that to be trained, both foresters and also civil society need probably some successful experience in order to be helpful for future training, but also for future implementation. And this is also true for biodiversity conservation, for forest management. Now, we ask you if you think that the best practices that should be put in place should be database, informative events, visit to application area, or eventually some direct comparison with the implementers of best practices, or eventually some bibliographic manuals, or as fifth option, some guidelines for a specific forest with some re-elaboration. As you can see, again, like before, the question is, what is the best initiative that for you should be available to increase the knowledge of biodiversity conservation or biodiversity approach into sustainable forest management? So again, as before, Lara can...
Yes, we start with the second survey, and please remember to assign the highest value, so 5 for only one statement in each survey. And so select the one you think is the most important, and remember to scroll down to see all the statements. Now I share the second survey. Now you should see.
Yes, indeed. Okay.
1 minute for the selection.
I participate as well because I'm a forest engineer and I have my ideas. So thank you for putting down this concept because are very interesting. Remember to push the button to send, because otherwise it's not possible to collect.
Okay, 1 minute. Okay, I can close the survey. And now I share the results.
Okay, perfect. We can comment a bit. For database, there is a quite high appreciation. For informative events, it is mild appreciation. For visits, oh, I see that most of the people appreciate that, confirm that personal knowledge of specific area is very much appreciated. And the collection of best practice manuals is also quite well accepted. Re-elaboration has more or less the same approach than the previous one. So, okay, very clear indication. Thank you. I close. Therefore, we can go in the next one.
Yes.
And we are going to talk about indicators. While the survey till now were focused on tools and methodology. We would like to know your thinking about quantitative and qualitative indicators. Because these are those who, in the end, are collected in the field to show trends or direction of change. We would like to know if you think it's better to have easy to apply protocol, for example, adopting some of the approach that are used in citizen science, or eventually having methodology that needs high technical scientific level. So only expert can receive, see and put down on paper such numbers or specific indicators. So we ask to answer. You see the survey asks on what do you think about application methods that are easy to adopt, even by unskilled personnel, or application methods that are easy to adopt, but with required specific training, or the third approach is strict method of application that require a certain degree of specialization. As before, 3 different approaches, and we hope that you can be coherent in voting these 3 surveys. Lara?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I have a clear vision on this topic. So you know that we develop a standard for certification of biodiversity protection. So we ask ourselves several times what would be the best approach. I hope that you could vote. Lara, can you see if the majority was able to put their
Yes,
opinion?
we are around 80%, so we can close now.
Yeah, probably
Okay.
somebody who did not have the updated version of Zoom was not
Yes,
able.
I think.
Yeah, probably. It's a pity. But anyway, you can read that the application method for unskilled personnel has more negative idea than positive. Then we have a very high score for easy to adopt with some training on skilled person, while the number 3 that require a certain degree of specialization has a less positive approach than the second one. So it seems, according to this survey, that the second approach is the more appreciated. Logic, these are numbers and we are only few, but at least we have an idea. It's a way of having interaction with all of you. Okay, let's go to the last survey. The survey will have 2 questions, and we are talking about again indicators, but we have ideas that probably indirect measurement of micro and macro habitats could be important to assess biodiversity, at least in terms of potentiality. Now, what we ask for you is how reliable do you think these methods are? How important do you think is continued research to improve the level of reliability of these indicators? And again, how important do you think is to standardize the methodologies? The last question for this first part of survey is, how important do you think is to establish a network of specialists to standardize this methodology? Again, we are talking about the indirect measurements of micro and macro habitats. So I hope I was able to explain to you properly. Please, Lara.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, this time is easier because we have not much, enough, and very much. So it is only with 3 options. And again, we are talking about the potentiality, the index EBP approach, and how non-direct measurement could be important or reliable. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, as we can see, they are all very much appreciated. So that means that who is listening at this session is appreciating very much both the reliability of these indicators, the standardization of the methodology, and the networking among specialists. Okay, that's good. Let's go to the next and final survey. And it is a very direct question. In which type of forest indirect measurements for the IBP can be applied most efficiently? Do you think in all forests, only in forest management for productive use, only in forest for conservation interest? It's very direct. It will be, I think, quite easy to reply. Thank you, Lara, for your technical assistance.
It has been a pleasure.
Yeah, it's not easy to to move among the link, but you did wonderfully.
Thank you.
Yeah, the question is very direct, but it's not easy because we have to think about the tool and how to use such a tool and where to use.
Okay, we are around 80%, so I think I can close the survey.
I think so.
Yeah.
Probably some is a consistent number of people who cannot participate at the survey. Okay, as you can read, the majority wish or think that such approach can be applied most efficiently in all forests. This is an interesting indication because means that people wish to have a tool to apply the IBP in all the forests, not only on those who have a conservation interest. Okay, thank you very much. Indeed, I can finish here my survey and asking you to have a relaxing coffee break. And I ask you to be connected again at the plenary session. Let's see, in 20 minutes. I was reading the comment of Luceline that must be applied efficiently, effectively in all forests. Yes, the survey, as you could see, was approached to see how people think that is more effectively. Probably somebody think that is only on conservation, on forest on conservation interest, or somebody else, as you could see, there was a 17% who was asking to have it only on productive use. Anyway, this was a survey. We were around 50 people, right? So it's good that we have such a different opinions. Excellent.
But
Lara?
yes, we report all comments in the final discussion, so we can discuss about it.
Excellent. Yeah, the idea was to put a stone on the pond, water pond, and therefore see you in 20 minutes, and we can eventually integrate any comment with a personal talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.